Welcome back to the Hot Factor 90.3 Nigeria Info and Herringford Harcourt, the number one news and sports radio station. And it's 14 minutes gone past 4 p.m. Conversation continues now. Many thanks for staying tuned. Apologies for the slight delay in getting this segment of discussion ongoing. But as I did mention at the start of the show today, and you might say that today's discussions are somewhat tailored, or that there's a theme to today's discussion. You may be right if you say that, because my rant earlier on was definitely along these lines as well. And I did mention this. We are in the middle, if you will, in the midst of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Now, these 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is an annual international campaign that kicks off on 25 November, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and runs until 10 December, Human Rights Day. It was started by activists at the inaugural Women's Global Leadership Institute in 1991 and continues to be coordinated each year by the Center for Women's Global Leadership. Once again, the 16 days kicks off November 25. November 25 is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And speaking of which, talking about that, the UN General Assembly designates November 25 as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, in case you're wondering what that's about. Well, I was going to give some background to that, but maybe we'll come to that in a moment. Well, talking about, or joining me right now in the studio to speak on this, no doubt, extremely important matter, and several talking points, no doubt. Does our society encourage violence against women and girls? Why is there a focus on violence against women in particular? I mean, everybody, or both gender, and the receiving end of some violence, some form of violence or the other. What's the situation of state in our country? What steps do we need to take to really bring an end to this, if we possibly can? I've got joining me in the studio, Stephanie Kebulun. She's founder, Working for Family Stability Initiative with FASI. Stephanie, good evening to you, and you're welcome to Hard Facts.
Thank you very much, Dayo.
All right, great. So let's get the conversation going. So I was going to talk about the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women earlier on. The premise of the day is to raise awareness of the fact that women around the world are subject to rape, domestic violence, and other forms of violence. Furthermore, one of the aims of the day is to highlight that the scale and true nature of the issue is often hidden. Well, Steph, let's get the conversation going right now. As I mentioned a while ago, whether you're male or female, a lot of human beings generally are on the receiving end of violence, ever so often, whatever the form or nature of the violence. Why is there specific or particular focus on protecting women against violence?
Well, like you rightly said, violence is meted out on both male and female gender. But why we pay particular interest and attention to violence against women is because culture, religious, and all of that have put the woman in a place of, let me use the word, permit the word for lack of any better word, a place of subjugation, a place of second class, second citizen, and then women in some parts of the world, and even in the Bible, people always refer to the scripture that says women are supposed to be silent in public places, and if women do not understand what is being taught in church, they should go back and ask their husband. So, this has been on for a long time, and it has made the other part of the human being to make the woman keep silent, just be silent, just be seen and not, be heard. And so a lot of times when people take this too far, to the extent that they now mete out all sort of violence against the woman. So the woman is almost at the receiving end of violence. Besides that, besides the violence against the woman, which is sometimes done by the other person, the male, you see that violence is also, the woman is also at the receiving end when probably there's a war outbreak, there's a battle somewhere, and the woman loses her husband, the woman loses her son. The women are always at the receiving end. They bear the brunt of whatever happens in the society. So that's why we pay special attention to the women.
Another things that you speak of are not peculiar to, or rather, the things that you speak of are widespread. It's a worldwide phenomenon. And that's why the UN is about this. It's not about what happens in a particular country.
Sure.
It's a worldwide problem that
Yeah.
we need to deal with. However, let's localize the conversation with now. Let's come home.
Okay.
In your estimation, and from the work that you do, you've done a lot of work with FIDA and several other international organizations and agencies, and WFASI at the moment as well. In your experience, would you say that we have ours? I mean, in Nigeria now, is a culture that is prone to expressing or unleashing violence against women? Would you say there's a cultural undertone to this?
Well, I would say because apart from the cultural undertone, it's the culture that also influences the kind of laws that we make. You can imagine in the northern parts of Nigeria, the penal code supports a male, a husband, to trash his wife, to give her some strokes of a cane in the form of discipline. Is that woman a child, for crying out loud? So you see that most of our laws are influenced by our cultural beliefs and practices over the years. So these things, whenever laws are being made, they just bring in what they have been practicing over the years, over the centuries, and then bring it as pass it as a law for people to abide by.
Now, beyond some of the things that are laws, and maybe our laws are some of the problems that we're having with violence against women in the country, and we'll probably explore that, part of the conversation a little deeper going forward. However, even aspects that are not particularly enshrined in law, and it's interesting you said that sometimes these cultural practices become enshrined in law, or it's given some kind of a facelift
Exactly.
in law somewhat. But beyond what is law, and some of these practices, which I shudder right now, this thought that they might even become law sometime, the practice of seeing women as an item, as a commodity of sorts, and even an abuse against a woman is not seen as a very, very severe thing. It's
Exactly.
is she not a woman?
Exactly. If a man slaps his wife, it's normal. But you see, even the women would say, it's not just slap, you don't bother about it. But if a woman slaps her husband, wow, it's news. But you see that?
Now, talking about...
I'm not in support of anybody, slapping the other, but then why do we just... It's the same... In fact, the man's slap is heavier, is more painful than the slap of a woman. So why would we now, make the other one lesser and then make this other one grievous?
Talking about cultural practices, and where we are coming from and where we are right now, would you say the situation is getting worse? And I say that against this background. Even as far back as eons ago, when we were ruled predominantly by our cultures, and traditions, and norms, when we didn't have constitutions and the rest of that, we still had belief systems that abuse against women was something that was extremely punishable. For example, when there was a time when it was unthinkable or unheard of that a girl would be married off and she was not a virgin. If anyone were to abuse her, in some of our communities, in some of our cultures, it was punishable by exile. In some places, it was punishable by even death. It was unthinkable that you would abuse a female. It was unthinkable. And even as wrong as that may be in today's terms, if the man went ahead to even, maybe the husband or the husband-to-be went ahead to even commit murder, it would be deemed permissible. Maybe it was the only time when it was permissible for a man to kill somebody else, extrajudicially in quotes.
Okay.
When
his wife or his female has been tampered with,
female or his child has been defiled by somebody else.
Yeah.
And that was our culture. Still us, by the way. But now, if we go back to even our cultural systems in our communities, you find our elders collecting goods, and then saying that we will settle the matter.
Exactly.
So, are we getting worse now?
Dayo, I think you have the answer to this question, because I wouldn't want to say we're getting worse, because if I say so, it then means we make a mockery of all that we've been doing over the years to ensure that women are free.
But what does the reality tell us?
Well, I think, you see, let me say, because we have, constituted, laws to govern us, some of us have relegated some traditions, customs that, were really, that kept our dignity as a people. Let me just say so, because that we give into laws, okay, either from colonial masters or whatever, doesn't mean that we should relegate some of the customs and practices that were dignifying. We shouldn't relegate them to the background. But unfortunately, it's really sad, like you rightly said. You see that in some communities, when these things happen, when there's even where there's a gang rape, you see that some community elders and chiefs would want to settle the matter with the goat, like you rightly said, and it's quite sad. You're surprised that with all our efforts and all of that, with all the sensitizations and what have you, it's really disappointing to see that these people do not want to. They are just incorrigible and insensitive at the same point.
You talked about you mentioned colonialism a while ago, and what might connect that to Western influence somewhat. Can we really blame it on Western influence? And I say that against the background because even in those countries, if you go by some of the things that make the news and even that don't make the news, it appears they even treat these matters a lot more serious than we do over here. So I mean, I'm struggling to deal with the concept of Western culture.
Exactly. You know why I said this?
Pardon me. For example, as horrible as it sounds, and there's no excuse for it, a lot of people in our part of the world find it hard to understand how that a husband can rape his wife. But of course, it's common knowledge in what we term Western societies. Most people don't have a problem understanding that concept. Also, we're quite familiar with the hashtag #MeToo movement from Western culture, and the cancel culture that came with it. If a woman dared accuse you of having abused her in some kind of way, or even made advances to her that were seemingly unfavorable, we've had cases where even was it a New York governor? I think Cuomo had to even resign as governor because of accusations that came from some of his staffers while in office, even before he became governor, I think. So where is Western influence here? If from information available to us, even governors, highly placed people, the creme de la creme of society, have not escaped punishment when they are seen to have abused women.
Why I actually mentioned the colonial masters and then talk about the laws is because, especially in our constitution, it said a guilty person is innocent until proven guilty. Sometimes some of these things are used as a loophole, to ensure that the perpetrator escapes justice. It's sad that the laws are there to protect us, but somehow we turn the laws to protect the perpetrators and not the victims or survivors, as the case may be. So that's why I actually mentioned and also stressed or emphasized that our beautiful customs and practices should not be relegated to the background just because of the influx or influence of some laws.
But even with our beautiful background and wonderful traditional systems of norms, it wasn't enough for you to simply accuse a person. There had to be proof or evidence that the person committed the crime before punishment was meted out. Of
course, yes. But that's, like you rightly said earlier, at that time, people were scared to do certain things. You agree with me? These things were not common as it is right now. The way we hear these cases of defilement of children, and all of that, I don't think it was like this in the past. I do not want to agree. Because especially cases of defilement of infants, I don't think my mother had such experience when she was growing up. Neither did my grandmother had such experience when she was growing up. But you see that it's prevalent these days, and they attribute it to a lot of things. So, if you ask me, some of the things are, just done with impunity, probably because, they turn out to escape justice.
All right, well, I'll talk about, you mentioned justice right now, which has to do with enforcement of law. We'll talk about that in a moment because one of a major reason, if not the main reason we have laws is to identify what's wrong, and we have consequences, of course. And when people fall foul of the law, there is consequence it should serve as punishment and deterrent as well. So that person does not do it again, and anybody who may be having such a thought
exactly.
would not engage in that crime as well. So enforcement of existing laws and to what extent they have served as deterrents, justice delivery will come to that in a moment. It is hard back to 91.390 info here in Port Harcourt, 29 going past 14. Speaking with Stephanie Pebble, founder of Wolfati, talking about ending violence against women. A commercial break. We'll be back in a moment. We'd like to get your take on this as well. Please stay with us.
We connect you to the world. We connect you to the vicinity. We are Nigeria Info.
Listen to me, I said this is a real situation and the government has to do something about it. What are you trying to insinuate? All these people looting Nigeria's money?
This is Nigeria Info, in the heart of Nigeria.
92.3.
We are Nigeria Info.
And now, Hard Facts. Hard Facts with Dio.
Okay, we actually had Factor 90.3 Nigeria Info and here in Port Harcourt. I'm Dio. 24 minutes ago before 5 o'clock. Still joined in the studio by Stephanie Ikpebulu, founder of World Francis. Stephanie, welcome once again.
Thank you.
We're discussing ending violence against women. We're once again on the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. An annual international campaign kicks off on November 25, which incidentally is the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women. This 16 days action or activism will run until December 10. Now, the theme, by the way, the global theme of this year's 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which runs once again from November 25 to December 10, is Orange the World, End Violence Against Women. Now, we'll come to that theme in a moment and what it implies. But before then, when we went for the break, I was talking about law and enforcement. To what extent have our laws and enforcement and justice delivery helped in the war, or helped or not helped, as the case may be, in ending violence against women in Nigeria?
When we talk about enforcement of laws, especially that it has to do with the violence against women or violence against persons, as we may call it now, because that law has been in existence in Rivers State since last year, November. So if we do not report cases, there is no way you can get justice, or can it be enforced? Sometimes the laws are there, but they are docile because nobody acts on the laws. It's only when you come up to say, oh, my right has been trampled upon or has been infringed upon, and then you cite the law, you use that law to go to court to fight for yourself. So when we talk about enforcement, we also look at how are these cases reported, and even when they are being reported, are these complainants following through these cases? That's another area we have issues. Like I've said over and again each time I'm on air, people come to report cases of violence, and then in the journey of trying to seek justice for them, the same persons will turn around to tell you they're no longer interested for one reason or the other. Sometimes I really don't blame them. It could be some pressure it could be some threats, yeah. Then sometimes it could be pressure from family, friends, and in the religious circle. So a lot of things, come up when people stand up to fight for their rights.
How about those agents of state whose responsibility it is to enforce these laws? How have they fared so far in this journey?
When you say agents of state who are to enforce these laws?
I'm talking the police, for example. I'm talking other agents of state because if I'm a victim in a case, it's not my responsibility to enforce the law. I can report it.
Exactly.
I can follow through, as you've said a while ago, but it's not my job to enforce the law.
Okay, I agree with you. Yes, they sometimes are complacent at the point of really enforcing these laws, because they can sometimes even pressurize the complainants, to back out of the matter. So it's either they must have been compromised by the other party, and things like that. So it's when you are dealing with humans, we are human beings, and that's the reason why each time we come up to ensure that people are aware, and then even when they are being pushed or shoved to back off, they should run to relevant bodies, and ask them to support them in this.
What's the consequence? What's the effect of this when people don't report cases, or even when they report them, they don't follow through due to pressure from whatever quarters, and when agents of states, like the police, for example, do not enforce the law, and basically we let offenders go scot-free with a slap on the wrist, or not even as much as a slap on the wrist in many cases. What's the consequence of that?
the, the consequence, is it on the side of the law enforcement agents or on the side of the
what's the consequence of that on society, on the Nigerian society, when we let offenders go scot-free?
Of course, that's devastating, because you let that person lose, he or she goes around to cause more mayhem in the society. So of course that's the consequence, and it's a grave one. They turn around, even sometimes the law enforcement agents who even let them off the hook, sometimes they come against them, they come after them, not intentionally like coming after, but they also bear the brunt of the consequences by letting these people off the hook.
You talked about pressures a while ago. You mentioned some of the different areas where these pressures come from. You also mentioned religious bodies as well. Interestingly, on the news earlier today, on our news that is, the head of the NAPTIP liaison office here in Rivers State, in Wamaka Ikedia, she was interviewed by one of our correspondents, and in her admonishment, she urged faith-based organizations in the state to play their role in curbing the rising cases of child abuses in the country and in the state. But you're talking about how even faith-based or religious organizations also, in some cases at least, mounting pressures on victims or their family members and truncating the course of justice. I'd like you to elaborate on that. Is that a common feature?
Is that a common feature?
Or how prevalent is that? What roles do they play? How do they truncate this justice process?
Well, sitting in the office and getting these people come to complain, and then when you are ready to run the race with them, the legal race, the legal battle, and then they come around. We've had so many cases where they come back to say, my pastor say, make me live and for God, So, if you ask me, is it prevalent? Hardly. Let me see. 10 out of 10 cases, if there is any one, I think not more than one or two will tell you, my pastor says I should go ahead with this matter. Out of 10 cases, 8 cases, you will hear the same story. So if you ask me, I think it's prevalent. Okay.
Now, does that help at all? Do you really believe that it's better to leave it in the hands of God, as some of our religious leaders would counsel?
Well, if I have been abused and I want to leave it in the hands of God, I think that should be my decision, not when I am being coerced to do it. Because if I am coerced to do it, at the end of the day, I won't be happy. So if for any reason we are asking a survivor to let God fight the battle, as we would always say, leave vengeance for God, I think it should come from the person. However, I agree that sometimes people, have to reason. You have to reason with people, friends and family. They have to advise you. Yes, counseling is good, advice is good, but then it should sink down deep with the person.
Besides the individual dispositions and so whether or not you want to leave things in God's hand or in whatever other person or organization's hands, generally speaking, and the drive here, the focus here is ending violence against women. The focus here is not an individual thing, it's a collective thing, it's a societal thing, it's a worldwide race here. This approach by some religious leaders or by religion to leave it in the hands of God, do not follow up the case, do not prosecute this person, forgive the person, does that help us in our overall ambition of ending violence against women?
I would say yes, and I would say no.
Okay, I'd like to hear the yes part.
I would say yes because sometimes in the cause of seeking justice, the survivor also goes through some trauma, going to confront this person in court, even if the person is being in the ATM, awaiting trial, for instance, the fact that you have to go all over this again, for some persons, it's really traumatizing. It's unhealthy. It makes them, it's really injures them for a long time. And then, so sometimes it is advisable that you let go. But with letting go, you also have to undergo some sort of psychosocial support. And that is what we do not do. They tell you, they ask you to let God fight for you. But at the same time, they forget, they fail. Not that they forget, they fail. They don't even know that that person should also, be looked out for and tutored. Because you see, when that the perpetrator is in prison, in the correctional center, that person, that individual that you think you're asking to let go of the matter, that person is also in prison. The mind is being imprisoned, and that person cannot function well as an individual in the society, and that affects whatever he or she does in the society. So what I will advise the religious leaders to do is to start teaching in their various churches or even in their homes, to start educating people how they can live amongst the fellow human beings.
So Stephanie, you believe that when religious organizations or leaders counsel leaving things in the hands of God and not pursuing justice, you believe that they are helping overall our journey, our course to ending violence against women?
I said yes and no. I said to an extent.
So in some way they're helping to accomplish that.
In some way, it depends on the individual.
So in some way they're helping to attain that goal of ending violence against women.
No, not ending violence against. No, I never said so.
So
you asked about
question.
the generality of the consequence on the society,
No,
and that's what I'm answering.
No, my question was, when religious institutions and bodies take this route,
no.
Are they by doing that helping in our general quest to end violence against women?
No, not at all. I thought you were asking about the consequence in the society, and that's what I was talking about.
Right, the lines are open right now. Join the conversation. Call 0817 923 0002, 0817 923 0003 or 0007. We're live on facebook.com/Nigerian for PH. WhatsApp is on 0809 0306416. Let's get your take on this matter. And that has to do with ending violence against women. Remember, we're on right now in the 16 days of activism, get towards ending violence against women. Let's get your take on the matter once again via Facebook, via WhatsApp. Call the numbers as well. Hello, hard factor. Welcome. Please go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Go ahead, please.
This is Akuku from Abokeche.
Go ahead.
So violence against women. So I have an option over it for properly in any woman at all. Being married by the husband is not meant to any act that woman acted. It's not meant for a man to raise up his hand to beat wife. If at all he encourages the wife, she repeats, she has to go to the parents of the wife and let the complaint to them and look at what your daughter is doing.
Hello, just a moment. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Are you listening to me? Okay, he wasn't listening to me. I was going to ask him a question because it appeared what he was saying is that women should not do things that will make a man to raise. That was the first thing he said. I wanted to ask him about that, but obviously he wasn't listening. What do you make of that, Stephanie? This perception that when a man is violent against a woman, she must have done something wrong. It's our fault now. So when you hear that, oh, he hit her, question is not why did he do that. The question is, what did she do?
Exactly.
Did she say something to offend him? When you hear that, oh, she was raped, she was sexually abused.
What was she wearing?
What was she wearing?
Why was she
Why was she there at that time of the day?
Exactly.
What do you make of that? Blaming the victim.
That's, you see, I don't know what to say about it. And you know, Dayo, sadly, I have to say this. It's not only the men who ask these questions, even the women ask these questions. The women we're fighting for ask these questions, and it is pathetic. It is pathetic. Now, before I go on further, I want to explain that violence doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be physical. You know, when we hear violence against women, we just believe there are some people who go through emotional trauma that is even worse than being battered physically. I'm sorry to say this, but that's the truth. Violence can be emotional, can be economical, can be psychological, can be mentally. So it entails all of this. But I can't just imagine why, when a woman is being assaulted by, especially her husband, you hear questions, what does she do? She must have spoken to him rudely. For Christ's sake, okay, now, I think some time ago we talked about this here. How many times have we heard a man lifting his hand against a woman in his workplace? Even though it may happen, but look, comparing the ratio, it doesn't. So if you can relate, beautifully, let me use the word, in your place of work, what stops you from doing that at home?
Well, let's go back to the phone lines. Hello, Hard Fact to Arkin.
Hello, good evening.
All right, go ahead.
To me, I think this violence against women is happening every day, and especially in the rural area. And I think the city are really trying, but they really need to do enough job. Then even the National Authority Agency, but they should take this in the rural area. Because I remember when I traveled this year, in my village in Plateau State, my cousin beat his wife. Then I asked him, okay, you beat the wife, okay, the day that you offended your wife, who will beat you? And the answer was that, don't worry, when you marry, you know the reason. So now men feel like beating women is a normal thing when there's this wrong, but when men do wrong, nothing will happen to you. And it's happening every day. Because I travel for only like just 3 weeks, but I know what really some women are passing through. So to me, I think they need to take this to the rural area. Thank you.
Very welcome. Hello, Hard Fact, try go ahead.
Hello? Yeah, Tayo.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm good. We're discussing this extensively, and I have to buttress a point I made earlier today, that sensitization is the key. Just like you were saying, the church needs to come in, because I said earlier, it's a religious nation. We don't have to use every avenue possible to us. When I mean every avenue. A shame we're the poverty capital of the world, and the illiteracy level is it's crazy. So there are so many things people do without knowing that these things are not the way it should be. Thank God we're in a digital age. Even the people who are in the rural areas can afford to have a phone, even if it's this small Nokia phone that has radio and all that. I think the what is it called? National Orientation Agency, non-governmental organization like the one your guest represents, need to make these jingles in local languages, make it in languages people can understand, infect people's ear with what should be done and what shouldn't be done, make it a household. There are some, let's say, if we're talking the popular noodle now, every child can sing the song of a popular noodle in Nigeria. This is the way we should make what is it called, awareness for these things a household thing. Let it enter into everybody's ear. Because part of the reason I think this thing is still prevalent is ignorance, poverty, and what is it called, illiteracy. If we take these things out, poverty we might not do much, but ignorance we can battle through awareness and creating enough sensitization on the people to understand what should be done and what shouldn't be done.
Right, you have for me, sir. Thanks for calling. We're talking about sensitization. We have to run this up shortly, sir. I read recently how that a young girl, a child literally, who was kidnapped by a man, was rescued in some Western country, and while he was taking her away in a vehicle, she was able to alert other road users by using a hand gesture that she learned on TikTok, some social media application. Are we doing, and she could only have learned that because there was a lot of sensitization going on, even using social media apps like TikTok. You would think it's just about dancing and other things like that. Are we doing enough sensitization back home? Yeah.
We are. I would say we are, because we go to churches, we go to schools.
Well, they ask you to leave it in the answer book.
Yes, we do, but you see, doing it is one thing. Them, taking up what you have told them is another. And surprisingly, sometimes when we go to these churches, you see that whoever, the person in charge is so happy to have you, and all of that. But when you're done and gone, they do what they've been doing before. So we cannot be everywhere, trying to look out who does this and who does that. So
I think we can do a lot more actually.
Yeah, I agree.
But finally, Steph, just a word or two on the theme of this year's observation, which once again is Orange the World, End Violence Against Women Now. What does that mean exactly?
Orange the world, end violence against women now. It's just as it sounds. Orange the world.
I get the second part. What's Orange the World?
Orange the world is, the orange color has to do with some, not just peace, but beauty. Okay? When you have peace and tranquility, beauty definitely follows suit, because there's no person who cries and still remains beautiful as he or she is, right? So if a man or a woman is crying, definitely it's going to affect all the facial muscles. So there's no beauty there. So Orange the world means, let's make the world beautiful, and then as we end violence against women now. So it's only when there's,
Pardon me, Steph. On that note, we have to end the conversation right now.
Okay.
Thanks to Stephanie Pebulu, founder working for Family Stability Initiative of FASI, discussing ending violence against women. I hope we can make a lot more progress. And please do not leave it in the hands of God. Stephanie, many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Dayo.
Commercial break right now. News update. Afterwards, we're discussing the direct or indirect primaries, which best suits us. Professor Kenneth Nwekwe joins me for that conversation. Please stay with us.